So again, yeah, my name's Meghan O'Sullivan. My background is nursing, but I really, the very first projects that I was involved in was I was working with an agency who had an individual who had spent his younger years in Willowbrook. And he had obviously had a lot of trauma there, and then had gone on to live in settings that New York State was able to offer him, basically smaller and smaller group homes. And always he was advocating that he wanted to live on his own, right? He wanted to have his own apartment. But there were always reasons and concerns that he can't do it. He's not going to be able to do that. And then in 2010, I started working with them, and working with the organization that supported him, and we were exploring how technology could come in there and provide some of those supports that staff had traditionally been supporting him with, being used to support him. We designed a system to cover cooking supports and medication and coming and going at night. Those were the concerns, was that he was going to leave the house at night, that he was going to turn on the stove and walk away, and that he wasn't going to take his medications properly. And it's been incredible. He has, this is way back in like 2012, he continues to live in his own apartment in Queens. So this is somebody for whom, in his younger years, nothing was expected, and always he'd been told that he couldn't, and he's a much older gentleman now, but really to have achieved that for himself is tremendous. And it was through the partnership with the organization and their openness to considering technology as a support. So I've continued to work with organizations across New York State, but in a really exciting way. New York, just as Nadine was saying, New York has begun to recognize that it's more efficient to use technology, as well as technology provides more options for people. So funding that is a benefit for everybody. So we're going to touch on the new waiver that they have out, as well as potentially we talk a little bit about the Mother Cabrini grant. Yeah, but I'll let Nadine from CFS is here. You can
I'll just talk a little bit about myself. I work for an organization that provides support to people with intellectual and varied disabilities in 2 states, New York and New Jersey. And I've worked there. I started off in that organization as a residential manager, then worked in quality assurance and training. And I had the fortune to meet Meghan along this whole journey of developing quality programming, right? That's always been kind of in my charge, in training, making sure that we are training people to be the best staff, making sure you're supporting them with all they need, and they're competent to be able to provide what the person needs. From there, I moved to a department called Innovations and Advocacy, which I kind of carved out in the agency that I'm at, because you all know, if no one is thinking about growth or innovation, we're just kind of struggling with the same processes and the same supports that we've always done, and they're semi-successful. So this is where I kind of have been focused. The focus is quality services. The focus is ensuring people have the lives that they want, the outcomes that they want, that they are able to be as independent as possible, and what can we do to enhance that, hence utilizing more technology. I will talk a little bit more about the home enabling supports, but I would like Meghan to just talk a little bit to you all about what SimplyHome is.
Sure. Okay. So SimplyHome is, I now work for SimplyHome. My background is nursing, but I now work for SimplyHome. We do technology that helps people live more independently. So remote sensor systems, medication management. We also offer remote support DSPs, which is something that nationally there's been a lot of movement towards, and New York State now has also begun to recognize that with this new waiver that we'll be talking about. But one of the things that both Nadine and I, and I'm sure that you all have run into as well, is that technology is not an option unless it's at the table. So unless we're considering different options for support, technology is never going to be that choice. And so making it part of the conversation is part of access, because everybody deserves access to that technology, but also funding, right? So thank goodness, New York has recognized that funding is part of that piece, and as we'll talk about, there is potential new funding. So we'll go into
Okay, so
the
this is a new
HES waiver.
right? New acronym that we all have to learn on top of the many that we already have in our database. So home enabling supports. There are 8 organizations in the state that have been authorized to provide home enabling supports. The Center for Family Support, the agency that I work for, is one of them. We are authorized to provide services in only regions 4 and 5. But we are aware of other agencies, so if there was a contact from any agency, we are able to provide you with someone that is able to provide support in your area, in your catchment area. Currently, the home enabling supports is a subcomponent of the larger assistive technology category, where typically you would ask for e-mods and those kinds of stuff. That pot is usually $15,000. Think of the home enabling support as what they're calling a more accessible, readily available part of those monies. If anyone has ever applied for the larger one, it usually takes a bunch of hoops and stuff to jump through to get it. Yes.
Yeah.
The home enabling supports is designed to cover assistive devices, technology, remote supports, which Megan just mentioned a little, and we'll talk about what that looks like or could look like for agencies like us, and our health assessment coordination services. And HACs are kind of, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Station MD, which is a remote platform where you can get medical supports from, but it's more generally like Amazon. You probably have seen the Amazon commercial where you can call and give them your symptoms while you're laying on the floor, and they'll send you your medication so that you can get it. So it's like that, something that hopefully intervenes or helps with the amount of volume that we utilize the emergency system, because we're always taking people to the emergency system. This is hopefully be able to have an impact on that for folk. And it is specifically, this part of this waiver is specifically for folk who are living in non-certified settings. So your self-directed folk, ISS grants, those kinds of things, but not in the group homes, the 24-hour or the supported setting as yet. Yeah, they could utilize this. The Mother Cabrini grant with New York Alliance is for folk living in certified settings. So that's a little different, but it's, we'll talk a little bit about that because we're also involved with that. But this is, I think, this is broader in scope. It's an attempt to help New York State embrace technology first as a part of plan. Megan and I was talking about future and what it may look like, and think of it like this. You may get 30 hours of in-person service and 20 hours of remote service, or 20 hours of tech supports. And so the plan will have to be articulated based on how much hours you need in person. I need an in-person to be here with her to do this. But remotely, I can have a watch that will say, did you put on your uniform before you get ready to go to work? Did you make sure all of that can be done by remote support? So HES are for persons who have OPW. You have to have a waiver, so you have to be in the system, already have a waiver, eligibility, and be enrolled. The people who live alone, so we talked about people who live with their families, live with roommates or others in non-certified settings, and they're not for people in IRAs or family care homes at this point. Not this part of the grant. The other portion will be for people in residential setting. The New York Alliance Cabrini collaboration, they have identified folk that they want to be in a project. So what you do is you say, I'll take 4 homes, and 4 people that I know in these 4 homes could utilize technology, and the goal of this technology for these folk that they've asked for is to move them to more integrated housing. So maybe they'll move off 24-hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That transition funding that's been missing so far, you know, because there's been that gap, right? There's that chasm in between. Exactly. Yeah. You have 24 hours or you're going to be flying free on your own. And that's exactly where technology fits in, you know, really well. Whereas in the past, you either had somebody with you, or you were kind of like on your own. And so that's really where we think, you know, technology fits in
And the bridge and the fact that technology can always be with you, right? My phone is always with me, so I technically have someone that can give me directions all the time.
Right.
Before, I would have to go to folk in the city and ask around for directions. Now I have my phone. It covers assistive devices,
Yeah.
right, that are designed, made, or adapted to assist a person to perform a particular task, but do not involve real-time in-person support. So examples are like smart locks, those visual doorbells that maybe people who you are concerned about them opening the door or not knowing who's at the door, a visual doorbell, I can see who's at the door from my bedroom. I don't have to necessarily go down to the door to be able to see who's at the door. That works well on our houses too, to help monitor in and out, but it also has helped people to feel safer living by themselves or without the whole staff setup. Things like the induction stove and ring doorbell is a form of a visual doorbell. Smart locks for homes or bedrooms. So recently you all know about this ACBS ruling to privacy. There are all kinds of locks out there where we can support people to have a locked door or have privacy. It doesn't always have to be knobs that turn because people may have a dexterity issue. There are locks that open by waving it, all those kinds of things that can keep a person at home. Doesn't need their door to be open all day where they don't have any kind of privacy because we have said they cannot or they're not able to open the door that we've put in place. And then remote supports. And remote support is, I think, a little more forward thinking. Since being awarded the contract, I've reached out to other agency and providers and see what they have done. SimplyHome has a whole remote support platform with staff available, and Meghan can probably talk a little bit more about what that looks like, how much more cost effective it is than in-person supports for a person that doesn't need in-person supports. It's available for on-demand check-in, so it can be set up, right? It can be set up where the first might go to a staff, and then the first remote might go to the person in the home, and then the second backup may go to a remote staff somewhere in another state that calls you and says, hey, you forgot to, or hey, I noticed that your stove is still on. Did you forget to turn it off? And as we described already, those are those 24/7 consultative and telemedicine services. That's what HACS is. Meghan, okay, so right now, the planning is at the life plan meeting, the care manager and the person should identify an outcome that can be replaced by technology. So together they say, Nadine, you want to socialize more, and we don't have a staff to maybe take you to, or you don't want a person, but you do want to get out more into the community. How can we utilize some form of technology to help you with that? Well, maybe you can have an Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch you can access an app that allows you to research community events. It also has an oversight ability where your parent or your loved one or your brother or sister can also know where you are in that community event, so they have remote oversight of you. So those kinds of things, it would be identified at the life planning meeting, then the care manager would go through the whole authorization process. I'm not going to go through everything because they're not going to remember, but it's the same like with everything, the NOD, all of those kinds of processes. Then it gets authorized, so the person, the care manager, they go through the person-centered planning process. The goal is identified that can be supported by a home enabling supports. They must have the OPWDD waiver eligibility. For remote supports, I keep seeing 14 in some paperwork, but for remote supports, the person has to be at least 15 or older. And their thought is that you wouldn't really want to leave someone less than 15 in their home by themselves, and so remote supports wouldn't technically be applicable to them. And it must be documented, of course, in the plan, and then that whole authorization process has to happen Once all of that happens, the next thing will be done is that you'll get a HES support provider. And that provider should come in with you, do an assessment, have some knowledge about what technology is that's available, so they can say, hey, you could use this to support work, hey, you could use this, and make a plan, and then reach out to a vendor who will, and then purchase, so work with the vendor. The vendor will probably need some basic information like Meghan would need, and then decide on what you're gonna be purchasing and make the purchase. And those are all kinds of so I know this is a little more detail than you all need, but your care managers are being trained, the CCOs are being trained, so they'll know what section of the life plan. I know everything has to be in the right section for it to go forward. So what section of the life plan this should be in. For self-direction plan, I did notice on the template that they've added home enabling supports. So the $5,000 would be an addition to the PRA that the person has now. I think that's it in terms of giving you broad scope of what it looks like, what the thought is behind it when we meet with OPWDD, and what the outcomes are that they want for this particular service feature, I guess I would call it, our service.
Surface expansion.
Yeah. I don't know as yet because they're calling it home enabling supports, but some of these might be translatable to what I would do in day activities, right? So
yeah,
it can,
like I'm thinking the watch.
Yeah.
Like you could use Boundary Care Watch to prompt you and or a system to make sure that you're sticking to your routine so you get out the door, on time. And then when you're at work, are you at 1 o'clock, are you supposed to be doing this? And then by 2 o'clock, you need to do that. So you could get prompts that are either written or a visual prompt. So it might be like a schedule to check the schedule, see what's next.
And I would say there is an outcome that they're focused on to have people be more engaged in the community. So that definitely runs along that line. What we're doing in ComHab is having people be more engaged in the community, and that's one of what they want from this kind of support. And
enable parents, right, to be able to take their child, who may be an adult, out into the community and not necessarily have to be standing right next to them, but instead be saying, we're going to meet back in an hour, to allow them to have that next level of independence. But one of the things that's key for this, as it goes forward, is really to think about it from a tech-first perspective, right, and keep that person-centered, because sometimes those things seem, how could you be focused on technology but also focused on the person? So I thought we'd just do a couple little exercises, right? We're all using so much technology in our daily lives that I think sometimes we forget that we are generally applying tech-first thinking to our own lives, right? So if I need to figure out how I'm getting from one spot to another, I'm not asking people as I go, where's the Marie this, where's McCann that? Right. Well, you can, but the other thing is you can just put it into your phone, right? And so my first thought is to put it into my phone. Now, if my phone doesn't work, I may need to use that backup plan, but that's that's an example of tech-first thinking. How am I going to remember a task or an event? Those are prompts, right? We're putting everything in our calendars. I get prompts all day. It's just, it's like if you lose your keys all the time, you just get a smart lock. You don't need to have keys. Exactly. So sometimes I think we get really caught up in creating special categories for people who receive supports, when the reality is, just when you're thinking about, does a person need support with something, is there a technology option first before we bring in extra staff? Because let's face it, there's simply that staff doesn't actually physically exist. We wish that they would on some level, but they really actually don't. So we need to have that options. Yeah. But is it the other thing that people often talk to me about is, is how do you know what's enough and what's too much? Because technology can absolutely be used in a restrictive way, right? So what you want to do is go for that Goldilocks principle, right? Like that's just nice in the middle. So you can give that a click. Because we all know what it's like when we're getting support for something we don't need, right? Someone's going to try and tell you how to cook something that you already know how to cook. Oh, that's annoying, right? Whew. So we don't need a lot of help if we're here. And on the other hand, some things are too difficult. We're getting set up for failure, right? It's like, I cannot go out rock climbing. I'm not, I can't run a 10K. I could probably do a 5K, but this is, you gotta be set up, for success. So when you're set up for success, it's just right? The terrain may be challenging, but you've got a technology map, you've got an assist there for you. So whether that's your work, you're not expected to be a computer programmer, but perhaps you're following, a certain set of directions and you can click that off, and it's enough technology support that you're gonna be successful. So one of the other concepts that underlies this in terms of being successful is honoring and recognizing that dignity of risk, right? And that's so important to our own lives, right? I get to, decide I get to miss the train, which is what happened to me this morning, and I was a few minutes late. That's my dignity of risk, right? I ran down the street and watched the train pull away at Grand Central because I was arriving at 6:15 instead of 6:14. But that's my dignity of risk, right? I had to deal with the natural consequences of that. But for people who receive supports from us, it looks like options and choice. Because just like we were talking about before, instead of having staff right next to them, over-supporting them, we can create new options. So it doesn't have to look like that or like, oh my gosh, fingers crossed, hope everything's okay, right? So we're looking for that Goldilocks principle in between the smothering and the, but what are those no options, right? So what is it that we're so excited about that's now available with this HES funding? And what I would say is that it's thinking about things in a different way, right? In a traditional way, we're always thinking about, well, how are staff going to support that person? So in that tech-first model, we're thinking about the potential of sensor systems, right, that can prompt an individual to fix things themselves. So they turned on the stove and they walked away, they got caught up in video games. All right, now they got a prompt, hey Megan, the stove's on, please go back to the kitchen. Okay, oh yeah, you're right. Or I got, I'm scrolling on my phone, stove's on. Or I haven't gotten up out of bed, so how am I getting to work on time? So I can get prompts that help me go about my life without necessarily having to have staff say, oh, Megan, it's time for you to get up, and it can reduce potential conflict. So that first thing is using sensors to self-support, right? So that person doesn't even need anybody else. They're using technology to remind them. The other thing is the backup, right? So if you're getting, the prompts are happening and you're not responding for whatever reason, you didn't hear it, you're not paying attention, now we can communicate out as the next level of support. So I didn't respond to the prompt about the kitchen, or I still haven't gotten out of bed, or it's now midnight and I'm up. Maybe I want to get communicated out now to staff who are then able to say to me, like, you got to get to work tomorrow.
I like to tell your Amazon FaceTime.
Exactly. Yes. So then that would be like staff, either your staff through your agency or that remote supports, which is also an actual person who can drop in or call in through a tablet and have a conversation with you. And it's not going to stop you. It's not going to turn off the TV for you. It's just going to say like, okay, well.
Like a telehealth DSP.
Exactly.
I even think about, so sometimes we move the job coach out because the person seems like they're able, and then they'll have a meltdown and lose the whole job because we maybe should have moved it more gradually. But we could have the job coach there available for them remotely with prompts. So the person, once we start to move the physical person out, then that person records prompts that the person now, if I'm panicking, right? Oh my God, there's 1,200 customers in the store today. We never dealt with that. What can I do? They can reach out and get guidance. So those are creative ways to help interject it into people's lives. Go ahead.
And even like with the Boundary Care Watch, you could set it up that if their heart rate goes above X, they're concerned, you could have responsive remote supports drop in, or their job coach gets a notification and they could say, hey, Megan, on the watch, they can call me. Hey, is everything okay? Do you need to check in? Do we need to do some deep breathing? You need to talk to your supervisor and get that guidance. So it's, again, a little bit more of that flexibility. So I thought we'd just go through, a couple little things. Very common, I hear medications, right? That person needs help taking their medications on time. So in a traditional support model, either the staff is gonna give them their medications or families are gonna give it to them, and they're gonna use an organizer, right? Which is not very flexible because that's on somebody else's time frame. versus if you, in a tech-first model, you could be using an app to remind if they have a lot of independence, or you might want to use a contact sensor on either a box or a cabinet that could remind them and then alert if they haven't accessed. But then as you're moving across that support spectrum, you have other medication dispensers that can organize it for them so that only the medications that are due at that dose time are even available to them. And that can be a simple device like a MedReady, or there are systems like ImproveOn that can actually integrate with the EMR, and provide that option, but also have that element of independence.
Cooking.
Oh yeah, so cooking. Again, in the back, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard, I ask about cooking, and they say, well, he's not allowed to cook. And it's like, so how, this is this person's home, right? So maybe they need support, maybe they shouldn't, maybe they need support to be cooking properly, but like, how can we get them closer to that goal, right? We could set it up so that as soon as they turn on the stove, remote supports are notified. So that might be your staff who are told, you need to call in, and they can call in and have that two-way audiovisual with that person. Or that's restrictive for some people, right? I wouldn't want somebody popping in on a two-way audiovisual every time I turn the stove on to cook dinner. But if I walked away from the stove, I might want a prompt to go back. And then that cascade, right? So if I don't respond to that, then we're going to bring in the staff. So it really provides, again, more options and choice for people. Sticking to routines, right? The prompts, there's a lot of conflict that we see decrease when technology is involved, which is really interesting because for some people, they get labeled as having behaviors, but you've never seen behaviors evaporate so quick as when you back the staff off, because it's an interpersonal issue, right? More than it is that person's actually struggling. So in a tech-first model, things like using alarm clocks instead of having staff, because you're not going to get mad at an alarm clock; it's just going off. The smart sensors like a bed pad, are they getting up? Are they moving? Are they in the kitchen, which means that they're going to be on time, getting out the door on time for work? Or remote supports to say, hey, looks like you need to be ready to leave in 5 minutes. Can I check your uniform? So you're wearing the right shirt, the right pants. All right, good. You look good to get out the door. Go ahead and get in the bus. This is just an example of the SimplyHome system. I have it out. I actually have a demo out there if you want to see it, but it's like a little white computer box that connects wirelessly with the sensors, and we program each system for that person or that house. We do a number of sensors that really just make you a good neighbor. So things like, did the smoke detector go off? Did they flood the bathroom? Because I have seen it happen where somebody flooded the bathroom, and instead of dealing with it in the moment, they kind of got concerned, so they just shut the door, because if you're not looking at it, it didn't happen, right?
I like my finances.
Right, exactly. What's going on over there?
Yeah.
But you can notify people out. That person can get a prompt, grab some towels, there's water on the bathroom floor, grab some towels, and people can be notified, or remote supports can be brought in to say, okay, well, how do we turn off how do you turn off the toilet in the back? How are we going to resolve this? Do we need to get somebody in there, or you're able to resolve it on their own before there's property damage? Again, linking things. I set up a system for a woman. She had tremendous anxiety. She would focus on things that had happened during the day, and she had been. Police had been to her location a number of times on the overnight because she had gotten she didn't have staff, and she had gotten just too in her head and was yelling and banging and things. So we set it up that if she gets out of bed, that's fine. But if she gets out of bed and there's motion in the living room for more than 5 minutes between the night and the nighttime hours, then staff who are at a different location or remote staff would be notified. So they could just call her and help her process and settle down and hopefully get back to bed. And then she was able to stay in that apartment. Yeah, it really is. It's so much fun. Yeah. And I often get asked about a list, right? Like, do you have a list of all the sensors that you have? And while there's a lot of sensors that we deal with commonly, it's actually really important to start with the outcome, which is a little bit backwards of thinking. But when you think about what's the outcome you're looking to achieve, then we back into what are the sensors and technologies that are going to help us get there. It's a much better fit than I literally worked with an agency who couldn't figure out why their Amazon Alexas weren't doing great things for them. Especially at this one house, they were like, nobody's using it. Well, those women didn't use speech to communicate, all three of them. Like what, why did they have what was going on? Why did they think that was gonna work for them? But they had gotten a grant to put Alexas in every house. So they did, It's like, this is where you need to look at what are your outcomes and back into the tech.
What I want to leave you every time I speak is for you to ask about the home enabling supports, ask about the technology, for us as providers to start thinking of tech as a natural support, because even though I have been with Meghan having small projects here and there to move people that are difficult and get them, I never really embraced tech as a natural support until I now start thinking, well, hey, this is less intrusive than me being next to the person, because all my values and all of that come with me. The tech is usually consistent. So we talked about even something like cooking. I cook spaghetti one way, you cook spaghetti another way, and you cook spaghetti another way. And we're all trying to teach it to this person who already has challenges with learning. There's so many inconsistencies in how we provide support. If we can iron out some of that, right, that will help people to have more, better outcomes for their lives. They will actually grow. It won't be every time a new staff comes in, I'm learning again new because the whole process has started over. So we're hoping that as the state looks at this and embraces it more, there will be more funding. It'll be more broadly scoped. For now, as I said, the HES is only for people in non-certified, but the Cabrini grant that New York Alliance received, that is to buy technology for people in residential homes. And so what we have started, just an example, is we are doing personal outcome measure interviews. That's a CQO process with everyone to find out what the outcomes are that are most important to them. And then from there, see which outcome can be replaced by technology for them. It has to be, as Meghan says, a person-centered process, all of folk that are involved in the person's life, because now you'll probably have to teach some things, right? Because now you move from the support to maybe teaching the family how to make sure the technology is working all the time, so that how to have backup batteries, how to have backup tech staff that can troubleshoot everything. But I'm excited to be part of it. I'm excited that this is a new offering for people with disabilities, because we always are leaving those folks behind. So I'm excited, and I am thinking in a couple of years it'll be, okay, so this one has a cell phone, just like how everyone has a phone in their house or a television. Everyone will have the tech that they need to be able to enhance their lives in the way that they need. That's the goal.
Yeah. That's it.
But I thank you for being here. I know it was a shift group.
Right now, it's limited what you can do. Is that what you're saying? It's limited? Like I saw the whole house was geared up with tech.
Yeah, so if, for example, $5,000 wouldn't cover that, right, Meghan?
Yeah, I mean, $5,000 would cover, one of the things we're talking about is,
5,000 for the one time.
Yeah, the one time. Well, it's annual. So, for example, if you identify a goal this year that Nadine needs a stove sensor, and it costs $5,000. That's your expense for 2025. 2026, you should be able to tap into something else that Nadine made. So you build on that. That may be a way to do
As
it.
they achieve their goals.
yeah, you can add,
You can add,
Or as you identify, there's another need that, so maybe we got the stove sensor, but the person also needs a reminder prompt, not just the stove. They need something else. So you identify something else and you have to add that into the plan for them.
And all they need is a waiver from, what's it, OPWD?
OPW, they have to be HCBS waiver enrolled. So they have to be in the system somehow. Most of the people that you support, I would think, have HCBS waiver. That's what pays for their
home and
supports.
community-based
Home
supports.
and community-based service waiver. That's what pays for all the supports that we provide. Home and community-based, so HCBS services, I know, there's so many acronyms.
it's like spaghetti soup, right?
And that's the
Alphabet
waiver
spaghetti.
that OPWDD, so once they're evaluated and determined that they have a long-term disability, that's how they get services. That's how they get ComHab, they have residential, all of those services. They have to be
Job
HCBS
coach.
enrolled.
Is it safe to assume that if somebody comes to my office and they're getting services from Access VR, that they
Yeah.
are OPWDE?
Yes.
Get a waiver?
It's safe to assume that, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Yes. All of that service is also provided by the waiver, the work supports that Access VR provides.
And innovations and advocacy, that's your specialty, right? You help them find housing?
No, I don't work in the housing as yet. No, we work in making either the housing we have more accessible, helping folk that's as they age to stay in place, so start to.
That's one of our big focuses right now.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of looking to see, like where this was going, because.
Yeah, because as people age,
Gets older.
Absolutely.
and you don't want to, they don't want to go to nursing homes. They don't
Right.
want to lose the folk that have known them all their life. How can we provide the support they need and keep them in their homes? So we utilize it for that also. And advocacy, I'm always, right, right? Because
Yes.
if you don't know,
Calling,
you won't
calling,
ask.
calling.
If the parents
Yeah.
don't know, they won't ask. If the person doesn't know, they won't ask. So it's all
Yeah.
sharing the message so people can ask for what's out
Yeah.
there in terms of, like Megan said, options.
Yeah, that's just options. And I'm happy to give you guys information if
There's a
you know,
table
yeah.
right there
yeah,
that she
yeah,
has with
you know,
stuff that you
way,
can
or-
actually
or
look
you can
at.
check the,
And we're actually ahead of time, Megan.
That
It's
is
3:18,
true.
so we
That
did
is true.
great. No, you're welcome. Thank you.